In his 5-decade career, director Otto Preminger pushed Hollywood to its limits, with dramas discussing the topics of heroin addiction, assault, homosexuality, racism, and abortion. Many of these films have been preserved by the Academy Film Archive for their historical and cultural significance. But today, we're going to look at his wacky 1968 hippie comedy that he made when he was 63 years old. The Academy appears to have overlooked this one. It derailed Preminger's career too. Let's find out why. Skidoo follows Honeymooners star Jackie Gleason as Tony Banks, a former mob hitman living a quiet family life with his wife Flo, played by Carol Channing, and his teenage daughter Darlene, played by Alexandra Hay, the latter of which is frustrating him with her interest in hippies. When Tony is unwillingly coerced into making one last hit for his old boss, he has to go to prison to assassinate an old friend turned informant, played by Mickey Rooney. It appears his only way out of the situation, aside from killing him, is to trust his young hippie draft-dodging cellmate, played by Austin Pendleton.
Don't you believe in America?
Yes, I just don't agree with everything it does.
In order to escape, he will have to open his mind up to the strange new world the 60s has to offer. And there's a bunch of stuff where his daughter tries to find him by confronting the head of the mob, God, played by Groucho Marx. Oh, and Carol Channing becomes a hippie. So, first off, this is one of those films that has some fun ideas, but too much is going on for them to reach their full potential. The plot point where they give everyone in the prison LSD so that they can make their escape is such a funny idea that I wish we had more of it, or at least that it appeared slightly earlier. There are some, like the opening scene, where there are some good jokes, but it drags on a bit. I didn't really care for any of the stuff on the boat apart from the very end of the film. Fun fact, that was actually John Wayne's yacht, Wild Goose. However, the film does work as a fascinating satirical portrait of society in 1968. From what I've seen in interviews, Otto Preminger was genuinely interested in the counterculture movement, even if, at times, he looked like he was the living embodiment of the how do you do fellow kids meme. The film does a decent job of poking fun at both sides of the cultural and generational conflict.
Violence is the sign language of the inarticulate.
What is he talking about?
Dash is only interested in nothing. He isn't taken in by our false values.
So how come you're driving a beat-up Rolls Royce? Why aren't you driving a beat-up Ford?
He even brought on a young Rob Reiner, who was doing improv comedy in San Francisco at the time, to help write the hippie scenes. It genuinely seems like Preminger wanted to portray hippies accurately. According to John Philip Law, who played the hippie love interest Stash, Preminger had already tripped on acid with Timothy Leary. For those of you who don't know, Timothy Leary was a psychologist who advocated for psychedelic drugs throughout the 60s and 70s, becoming a popular counterculture figure as a result, with Richard Nixon calling him the most dangerous man in America. As the marketing team scrambled to market this film, they included interviews in the trailer with turned-on older celebrities advocating for the film, including Leary himself.
It is the gassiest, grooviest, swingingest, trippiest movie you've ever seen.
Kids will like, while laughing, they turn on the older generation, get them high. Can you imagine Groucho Marx being God? I think this movie is going to turn on the country.
I laugh my head off. So if you see a man walking around without his head, that's me.
It's not odorless, colorless, and tasteless. As a matter of fact, it's technicolor.
The wildest trip anybody can ever take.
A real swinger.
A young person in the country should turn on mom and dad by taking her this movie.
Anybody that don't like that, Daddy, don't like chicken on Sunday.
It'll make you love better, it'll make you feel better, and it's even legal.
I guess it was an interesting angle to market it as the film young people could show their parents so that they would understand them and become part of the counterculture scene. Jackie Gleason was great as the weary and cynical Tony. I actually don't think I've ever seen him in anything before. I know they cast the film with a lot of older stars, most of whom were names in television, including 3 60s Batman villains, with Preminger himself having played Mr. Freeze. A lot of people criticised it for this reason, but I don't know. It adds something to see all of these older people trying to be hip in this comedy poking fun at their own generation. Carol Channing is infectiously delightful in this film. I had vaguely heard of her, but never actually seen her in anything. She's just brimming with delightful energy, and Flo is a really fun character. Her charm definitely carries her performance of the title track. I'm definitely going to track down Thoroughly Modern Millie now. It's nice to know who Ra Styles was impersonating on Whose Line for all those years.
Did I fire 7 shots or 6? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this confusion, I've forgotten myself. So you have to ask yourself one question. You feel lucky. What do you call?
I also really like her character. She starts off as this disapproving mother and then invites the hippie commune over to her house just to get her daughter to come home. It's rather wholesome. Groucho Marx appears in his final film role as God, a paranoid mob boss who lives locked in his suite aboard a private yacht. Groucho is an icon for a reason, and he made some great TV appearances in this period. But he's very bland in this, and has no opportunity to show off his famously acid wit. Apparently, he thought very little of the film, calling it god-awful in a later autobiography. But quite possibly the best thing about this film is that, apparently, in preparation for this film, Groucho Marx tried LSD. This is what this film has given us. Does his character take acid? Well, no, it doesn't look like it. He just smoked some pot at the end. It turned out that Marx was one of the only cast members to have any experience with the drug, however. Even Harry Nilsson had yet to try it. However, he would later experience it, inspiring his rock opera, The Point. If this video gets 25 likes, I'll make a video on The Point, so make sure you subscribe if you want to be the first to see that. Fresh off her role in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and the Monkeys episode Monkey Mother, Alexandra Hay is good in this, but I only really want to bring her up in this because she is literally who I wish I could look like. Just look at her! Former teen idol, and angel from Greece, Frankie Avalon is in this, as Cesar Romero's mobster's horny son, Angie. He's good in it, and I love his speech describing the protection racket as a noble societal service. In terms of production design, there's a few really nice costumes, and the set for Frankie Avalon's remote-controlled apartment was a lot of fun. Harry Nilsson's soundtrack has some great songs. This was only his second full album. I absolutely love the Garbage Can Ballet. It was stuck in my head for days when I first heard it. Its lyrics are wonderfully absurd, and the only sound more beautiful than Nilsson's voice is Nilsson harmonising with himself. I also really like the title song Carol Channing's character sings at the end, as well as the way the theme is used in the soundtrack. The highlight is probably the very end of the film, in which Nilsson sings the entire end credits. I don't just mean the cast, but the crew and even the copyright notice. They did this because Preminger wanted to make the then unusual move to put the credits at the end of the film, rather than at the beginning, and he didn't want the audience to leave early.
Copyright MCMLXBIII by Sigma Productions Incorporated. Your seat's on fire.
As for the instrumental tracks, it's pretty good, but I lack the musical eloquence or expertise to go any further in depth. It didn't particularly stand out, and it's not his best work, but that doesn't make it bad. Nilsson was an incredible singer and songwriter, and it's nice to see that someone so big in Hollywood had so much faith in him early in his career. I enjoyed the film more than I expected, but it's still not a very good film. It has a premise with plenty of potential, but I'm afraid it fails in the execution with a few fun moments, visuals and performances, in a mess of disjointed plot points. I think it may have worked better if it had narrowed down the plot points and characters and focused more on the escape and the cultural divide between the young and old. However, it is buoyed up by some great performances, a couple of good songs, and its own pure insanity. Preminger said that he created the film as an escape, and I think he succeeded. If you're a Nilsson fan, it would be of interest. But, of course, you already have his soundtrack album, so you could always just listen to that. I think I would recommend it to fans of 60s counterculture. But there's so many better films from the era that you could watch instead. Skidoo is one hell of a trip, and it's a fascinating snapshot of the time, but there are better films I'd recommend before this one. However, I know it has a cult following, and I can see why. There's lots of fun to be had here. If you're into the counterculture of the time, or are a particularly big fan of any of the leading actors, you may well enjoy Skidoo. In the UK, it's officially available to stream for free on Plex, so there's nothing to stop you from checking it out for yourself. If you are a fan of the swinging 60s, then you can discover more films by watching my 60s playlist here. See you soon!
Who are the Ruttles? Please tell us.
I'm sorry, I don't know who they are.
Who are the Ruttles?
I don't know.
You do know.
I don't.
You do know.